bossy, no charades. Payroll baddies, ready to fight or get paid.
Welcome to a special edition of Payroll Baddies. This is going to be a fun one, everybody.
Hey, I got one. So I got a poster back here. You know what it says? It's Kobe Bryant. It says, if you see me in a fight with a bear, pray for the bear.
Pray for the bear. Okay, and I love it. I love the energy we're going to bring to this podcast today. And today is actually it's going to be like a 60 minutes almost, like a special edition of us talking about a specific topic. And today's topic, I thought, Imran, would be fun to talk about is Analyst and the Magic Quadrant. I've been seeing a lot of these posts on LinkedIn, and I know you have because I know you've been commenting on some of them. But before I get into that, again, just for our listeners, because I was pretty new to Magic Quadrants and analyst reports. From my background, I do deal with them, but again, it's not as common as if I were in a client's shoes picking a choice of software, right? And so, I'd love to hear more about it, and I've been seeing a lot more posts about them, and it was very interesting to me because again, I know what I know about the Magic Quadrant and analyst reports is there's a lot of companies out there that use it to basically make multi-million-dollar decisions to pick their next software. And I'm like, how are people putting so much, weight on these reports? And I wanted to understand more about it. So what a good podcast topic to really talk about today.
Yeah.
And really, Imran, the first one I want to talk about is actually got me so excited and interested because I know you post a lot, but then when you comment on some things, I know it's important. So I saw you comment on a very specific post, and it got a lot of people talking. It was the post around where somebody had compared basically the size of the Workday versus SuccessFactors versus Oracle, and just showing how much bigger Workday and Oracle was to SAP, and that's not true at all. So just wanted to get your take on that and see what was happening.
Right. And so, I ignore a lot of these things. I think, some of it's just straight bullshit, right? And so I'm like, all right, whatever. But the reason I actually comment on that one is someone that I respect a lot sent this to me. And, it just kind of got me realizing that, look, people look at this and perceptions are made from this and you get misconceptions. And so this particular one, right? Look, Workday's done well. We've known that, and that's all fine. But it showed them with 25% of market share, and then it didn't even say SuccessFactors, right? It said SAP,
Right.
HCM, and it showed that 11%. And then it said Oracle PeopleSoft, not like Oracle Fusion or any of their cloud stuff. So it's like, are you comparing cloud to on-premise, and then you're just ignoring all of the cloud stuff with SuccessFactors? Right. So that kind of was like, all right, well, I'm having people that I respect bring this up to me. So let's just clear it up. So I actually responded to it and I was like, hey, I want to be respectful of people when I respond to them. So I'm like, hey, I'm curious where the data comes from. I wonder, are they classifying SAP HCM as the on-premise model? And why is SuccessFactors not there? And then I kind of followed it up with publicly available information, right? So SuccessFactors, I included a press release from 2024 showing that they have over 10,000 customers, 290 million users, right? And then I included data from a press release where they put out where Employee Central, the core HR, has over 6,000 customers, and that was from 2023, right? And then I followed that up with, okay, we know Workday has done well, but from public analyst information, they, in September 2024, right, 9 months later, showed that they had 5,500 customers. So this was, 9 months later, and they had 500 less customers. So how can you, in any type of, credible notion, say that their market share is more
Right.
than double SAP? It just didn't make sense, right? So that one kind of got me irritated, and so I responded to it. Author never responded back to me. He was responding to other people, but he never responded back to me. And then the guy doubled down and pointed to this 6th Sense report that actually showed Workday had 30,000 customers and SuccessFactors has 7,000. Even though if you go to the Workday website, there's workday.com/customers, right?
Right.
They themselves claim they have 10,000. So you're pointing to this market research data that claims more than the vendor does. And then, I already showed the data that SuccessFactors has in a press release in a publicly traded company. So they don't, they're not making up customer numbers that showed above that for just SuccessFactors, right? And so I don't know. Some people want to ignore the facts, and that part's just irritating, right? So I think that's one example of where an analyst or research just can go wrong. But there's others too, right? So I think you sent me one in our chat. We're always having these chats behind the scenes. This other post about like that whole SPM Forrester, and there was a guy
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
did post on that. Yeah, you saw that one?
That, I mean, that was again, I mean, but before we get into that, but just going back to the first one again, because it always baffles me when I see posts like this and people posting all these different vendors, right? And analyst reports. And again, I don't know if just our listeners and people out there just know all the type of reports that are just available. And again, this is something that, again, I think people should be doing a lot of due diligence about what report are you looking at? What is the back end, like what.
Hey, this is Brent Skinner, host of Small Talk Window here at the Work Defined Podcasting Network. Have you ever wanted a short podcast to listen to during a coffee break of your workday? You've come to the right place. My guests dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation around the world of work.
Criterias are they even using to make these reports? Because shit, we can make a magic quadrant out of anything. We can put anything we want on the top right corner, whatever.
You like the baddies one, huh?
Yeah, baddies one, exactly. Jesse would be on the bottom, so but no, but the other example, 100% was the other one was so surprising. Was I believe it was a SPM Forrester versus IDC report.
Yeah.
And it was literally the same product, right? The same product categorization.
Sales performance management.
Yeah, exactly. Sales performance management. And then one, SAP was like at the bottom, and then the other one, SAP was on the top. So it's like, well, how did you both get this information, and how is it complete opposite? So I know you shed some light on that. And again, it'd be great for our listeners to hear about that.
No, it was actually a LinkedIn post. We can share it in our chat. Guy Abhijit, right? He just said he read the fine print, and come to find out, SAP didn't participate in the Forrester one, right? And so that left them at the bottom left, but you wouldn't know that obviously, right? Unless you're going and reading, which most people don't. They just look at the graphical chart, right? And so I think that's one of the problems is sometimes vendors don't participate in certain things, right? And I saw another one. Shout out to this guy. I don't know him, Tim Sackett. He also posted an entire post about a recent Gartner MQ, right? And so he actually went and posted and said, like, I can't understand this. And I think his exact title was Gartner's 2025 Magic Quadrant for ATSs is a joke. And then he actually broke it down. So shout out to him. He said, what did they get right? And then what did they miss? And he pointed out like obvious discrepancies. He said like Eightfold wasn't on there. And if you're putting Phenom on the list, how do you not have Eightfold? Or Paradox, who's one of the fastest growing ones on there, right? Like, how did they get that so wrong? And then they have these other ones. So I don't know. I mean, people are clearly seeing some of these things, but you have to understand like what's going on there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's almost like, again, some of my small interactions that I've had with analyst firms, again, one was, hey, asking us to basically, hey, do you want to pay for our services, and then fill out basically information. Now, what they did with that information, I have no idea. But again, as a company who doesn't understand how how are analyst firms getting their information? Is it that they are requesting it from the vendors? Well, how are they getting to know the vendors? What are the criteria they're using to make sure that everybody is they're looking, apples to apples, right? And then are they also doing client references to back it up? It's like these are all things were not clear, and I know again there's a lot of people use the word pay for play sometimes and things like that, but just curious to hear your thoughts on what you have seen in the market and.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know what? Before we get there, I want to talk about one more thing, right? Like, so we talked about one of like, look, sometimes it's just bad data straight up, right? Sometimes it might be a vendor not participating, and then sometimes it also could be the comparison, right? What are we comparing? I saw another one. There was this other one for nucleus research. And one success factor was misspelled on there, right? Like you're not even getting the vendor's name right. Like you can't. How are you supposed to trust this? But then when I looked on it, you're literally comparing these enterprise players on the same chart, as like these small market ones, right? And so that to me just doesn't make sense. It's not apples to apples. The target buyers aren't the same. The people shopping for them aren't the same. So like, how can you have credibility when you do it that way, right? So I think that's just a different thing that, being on the buyer side, you have to look out for
Right.
when you're looking at these. So now I guess going back to your other point of, all right, so some of them have a lot of credibility. Gartner obviously has credibility, and we saw from Tim's post that all right, sometimes they do miss. I guess for me, I worked on a bunch of these, right? Everyone knows I worked at SAP for a long time, and so I worked on a whole bunch of them. I probably did over 20 analyst briefings during that time. I responded, so I was the one responding to the Gartner MQ, filling it out for the payroll part for their core HR one. And look, I definitely saw direct incompetence when I worked on that MQ, right? So I'm the one that filled out all these questions, and it was something I put a lot of passion into. I really cared about it. So I put a whole bunch of details into it. So it's actually, they come to the vendors like SAP and they give you a questionnaire. So I guess they send it to all the vendors and you have, I don't know, let's say 100 questions that you have to answer. And then there's part of it is you brief their people, they get customer interviews, they do stuff. So I will say that they're doing a relatively thorough job and they're having these conversations, assuming you're participating, right?
Hmm.
But then like I said, I think I saw some direct incompetence. So for many years, payroll wasn't really even mentioned in the report, right? So they included the criteria. I answered all these questions year over year. However, my last year, for whatever reason, they decided to list it as a weakness for SAP. And believe it or not, the verbiage they used was SAP lacks next generation functionality, such as continuous payroll. And I'm not joking with you, Raj. I'm not joking. I'm
That's
not exaggerating. As soon as I saw that, I remember it to this day. I was at Success Connect when I got this, and in my heart just dropped. I'm like, what is going on here? I went and looked back at my answers, and I'm not kidding you. My first answer to the first question mentioned that SuccessFactors SAP has continuous payroll, right? We
right.
all know that PCC does that.
Yeah.
It's literally auditing your payroll, jobs running behind the scenes. So I'm like, how can I not feel like the person who was putting this together was incompetent when you came up with a weakness for a topic, and did you not check row number one in the section, right? Like my best guess is maybe they did some customer interview where someone mentioned that, but maybe there was just some on-premise customer using SAP's payroll that didn't use PCC. I don't know. I mean, but still, read the report and
Right.
like, how do you do that? And so then the way that it actually works is if you can't change a weakness. So if they find something factually inaccurate, which is what I said this was, they basically me rewrite it, and I sent it back that SAP lacks advanced functionality such as native earned wage access, right? So I played that game. So I did want to, I had to show weakness, but that was one that we had a very logical rebuttal to, right? So you have vendors that are on your app store to
Yeah.
do that, and given the global nature of SAP, that was a strategy that just made sense. So I filled out and did these briefings for others, but I think when we get down to it, you have to ask questions about bias with some of them.
Yeah.
One of them, the CEO who ran this analyst company was an ex-Oracle guy. And what do you know? Oracle's coming out on top
Number
on everything,
one.
right? So, I guess I'm sorry, but I have a hard time seeing some of these reports as credible. And what I would love to see is them just disclose the vendor spend. I don't know if I think you saw it because you sent it to me. But my guy Jerome from Data Scale HR, he posted a brilliant honest
Yeah.
analyst grid I thought was perfect, right? It had, event sponsors in one corner, too big to ignore another, Series A. Like, I don't know. I think that part was
No,
just so
but
spot on, right?
but exactly like everything you again what you going through that process of what you did when you were at SAP just I mean that kind of for me actually like resonates because in the sense of like I'm like for me it's always been such a black box, right? And I would love to see more clarity around, again, not only the spend, but also the criterias. Now, again, maybe in some of the reports now they are putting all that, but hey, your graph, your images, I know like are being used by other people and
Sure.
vendors, and that's how people are sometimes consuming it. Yes, of course, the company should be paying for the whole report, and I'm sure they're going to go to, but who is really going to be asking those type of questions? Because if it's not clearly laid out for them, right? So again, all like you said in the beginning, somebody who you like came to you and said, "Hey, look at this graph. Look at how, Workday is just
Yeah, yeah.
killing it." I
Sure.
mean, that's not really the whole truth, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because, as we were getting ready for this podcast, I thought I would, again, do some of my own research or see some things. And there has been lawsuits out there before with other analyst firms about this certain topic, from vendors saying, "Hey, we're not getting a fair shake. You're misrepresenting." And you know how, which was so surprising to me, how the analyst firms won the cases is by saying that these reports and these magic quadrants are opinions and not facts. And isn't that the crazy truth? I mean, that's what we should be, right, people should be talking about is if you're really going to make decisions off of it, no, these are just opinions,
For
right?
sure.
And not facts. And really, there has to be other mediums that you need to be using, to really gather which is the right software for you.
Yeah, and you
You
know
know?
what? I want to get back to something you said earlier, Rod. So I saw another post about a guy, Alessio, right? And he actually basically wrote this post saying he was being extorted. It was some learning analyst research company, and they basically came to him and said, "Hey, we would love to interview you about your capabilities," but it was like a package you had to pay to even get interviewed, right? And I think he said it was $20,000
Yeah.
to do that. How wild is that? And I think you said you've also been, you
Same
run
thing.
a business in services and that sort of thing. You've been solicited for someone to come and
Same thing. And again, it was a top analyst firm. Again, I'll name it. It was Gartner, right? Who came and who said again, like, look, you want to use our services? You want to use this? You'll get to spend time with our analysts. They'll get to know your company, which can then be used for marketing and other things. And
right.
I'm assuming, and again, if somebody else knows better, let me know. But this is the way to get into a Gartner report because, like again, if you're a mid-sized, small-sized company, unless you have those marketing spend or the, maybe PE backing or other stuff that comes with it, how is a company, I mean, how is, any analyst firm going to know about you? And again, I know a lot of, people might be like, "Oh, you guys are just haters because you guys aren't selected." No, I mean, honestly, it's just more of a curious question. Like, without spending money, how do you get in here? Again, is it that analyst firms are talking to clients, but, typically when the clients are talking, again, it's like a feedback loop. They're seeing the magic quadrant. They're potentially only talking to the the top, the vendors that are on there, and then we're not getting any of the disruptors in there, right? And again, that was very clearly laid out in that recruiting one, and there,
Of
where
course,
you're
yeah.
not.
And so I don't know. It's hard, to find a lot of credibility when it's that aggressively pay to play, right? I mean,
Yeah.
look, my guy Pete Tiliaco is one of the best analysts I've ever spoken to, and I appreciate him because since the day I met him, I was working at SAP. He was an analyst, and look, like I said, I've done a lot of these analyst views, and there's a lot of ego there. I think Pete stood out to me. He never had an ego, nicest guy I met, and then he knew his shit, right?
Right.
And so that's why I just got along with him from day one. And like we've always talked about, we're gonna have him on the
We got to
podcast.
have him on the podcast. That's
Yeah,
gonna.
for sure.
That's
So there's a lot of really good analysts out there, right?
yeah.
No doubt about that. A lot of good research out there. But I guess part of it is, you have to be cautious when you're using an analyst report as your primary driver to pick an HR or a payroll
Well,
vendor using that. It could be a data point, but make sure you think about one, your business, right? And I'll let you talk about that too. But, like what could this analyst report not be showing you? Did some vendor
right.
not participate? Is it flawed data that's behind there, right? Is it not considering XYZ things? And I think unfortunately a lot of buyers don't know that, right?
No, that makes sense. And again, like I go back to, something I had mentioned, I think many podcasts ago about like, again, it's so curious. It's so interesting to me to find out when a client or sorry, a company that is, an SAP shop for, let's say finance, their, all their ERP system, but then because, they pick Workday and sometimes, you hear, oh, well, they're the leader in, in this Magic Quadrant, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I'm sorry. We all know, everybody listening, that this is an SAP bias podcast. So yes, Imran and I are going to be SAP biased, but it makes zero sense. You cannot tell me there's that big of a difference where the interconnectivity of SAP, of having a full suite connected to all your ERP and HR is going to make that much of a difference, by switching out to another product, right?
No,
And
for sure. I mean, look,
right?
we've seen it on the other side now, right? We have many years of data. We have a lot of customers that did exactly that. And, like the sad reality is they're paying a price for it, right? Because if you do have SAP for finance, you have SAP for payroll, and then you choose Workday for HR,
You chose poorly. Let's be
you're
honest.
gonna
You
spend a
chose
lot of
poorly.
money. You're going to spend a lot of money keeping those connected. You don't have aligned things. And the reality is they will never work well together, right? Their
Yeah.
release timings will always be off. There's not going to be cohesiveness in it. And so, without even saying, even if you think it was a superior HR product, all of the other things, if you're wall-to-wall SAP, it's a mistake to go that route. And
Especially if you're a global company, right? With
Oh, yeah,
all the
yeah,
localization, with all the payroll, there's nothing else that can touch it. I mean, again, these are facts. These are
right.
not just biases. These are facts.
Yeah,
Right?
SAP. From a globalization standpoint, right? I think this is one of those things that is difficult during the sales process to really articulate, right? Because if you're global, I think using any other vendor, if you're a large enterprise company other than SAP, is a mistake, right? You're going to have to spend so much time, effort, and money to localize those countries, the specific details of them, and then you're going to have to maintain those as well. SAP spends a ridiculous amount of money on localization, and then on top of that, if you do go with another vendor, right? I don't even care who it is, but you're going to handicap yourself when it comes to your global payroll for all these other
Right.
countries too, right? Because with SAP, you just have more options. So, I think these analyst reports sometimes are overrated from that standpoint, but you have to consider the intricacies of your business, right? Are you an SAP shop? Are you global? Those very much lean in favor of then choosing success factors for HR, right? No if, and, or buts about it. So yeah, that's how I feel, and no one's going to change my mind.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And what a fun conversation. Maybe we should wrap it up, Imran. What do you think? Maybe what are some parting words you can leave our audience?
Payroll baddies, baby. Let's go.
Exactly. Hey, SAP payroll is king, baby. Now, again, this was a fun conversation. I hope we have more of these because again, it's always the type of conversation we have in the back end is what most people are probably thinking and want to know more about. So, it's always fun to have these, honest conversation. And I hope people listen to this. And even if we're wrong about something, comment on here. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us what we don't know. So we'd love to learn.
We'll call out the bullshit. And if you don't like it, then, that's fine. Let's have a debate.
Exactly. That's great. All right. Baddies out. Thanks, everybody.
It's payroll baddies. We keeping it hype, doing payroll right. We don't need no stripe. Work they calling y'all rock stars, ain't that cute? Day Force, UKG, y'all still in pursuit. But we baddies in the game, bringing more to the loop. Go. Baddies bring the clarity, got clarity in sight. We bringing payroll tech, making it right, spreading the word. From S4 to the cloud, Daddy's got the vision, making payroll proud. SAP payroll is king, we wearing the crown. Those companies starting with P, y'all know the name. Try to keep up, but it's not the same. Tech on lock, we automating the flow. No more headaches, we let that payroll glow. Innovating daily, got the future on deck. Payroll baddies, running it, showing respect. So all the payroll baddies, you know who you are. Join the cause, let's take it far. All you baddies out there, it's time to rise. Join the movement, no compromise. Keep your rock stars, we're classy, no charades. Payroll baddies, ready to fight and get paid.